Patty. So one of my favorite things to make during the fall season is pretty much anything pumpkin flavored. I just love the taste of pumpkin, and I really enjoy baking and cooking and that type of thing. So I am really excited when the fall season comes because I get to make pumpkin cookies and pumpkin bread. Recently we changed my daughter's diet, and she's not strictly gluten-free, but we try to feed her as much gluten-free things as possible. She suffers from acid reflux, and we really don't want to put her on any medications, so we're trying to see if diet changes will help with the acid reflux. So my mom helped me find a few low carb, healthier alternatives. We also try to stay away from sugar as much as possible, so we try to use natural sweeteners. So this recipe is a healthier alternative to pumpkin bread. It's a pumpkin bread recipe, and it is gluten-free, and it contains natural sweetener, so it is much healthier, and it's something that is packed with protein and good to feed your family. So I wanted to share the recipe. The original recipe is from I Breathe. I believe it's called I Breathe When I'm Hungry, but I will link it down below. She has tons of wonderful recipes, and I want to make sure I give her credit for the original recipe. I did make a few changes to our taste, but I think the original recipe is wonderful as well, so that will be linked down below if you want to refer back to it. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you need to do is mix together all your wet ingredients. So you need 3/4 of a cup of melted butter. So I went ahead and melted the butter, and I'm going to just put that into my mixer. You also need 4 eggs, and I already did that as well. And you need 1/3 of a cup of unsweetened almond milk. So I'm going to go ahead and add that as well. And another thing you need is 1/4 teaspoon of maple extract. We don't have any maple extract. I really recommend it. It adds a very nice flavor, but right now we are out, so I'm just going to use vanilla extract for today. And you can do the same, but the maple extract, if you do have it on hand, adds a really nice flavor. But for today, we will just use vanilla. So I'm going to add that, and I'm going to go ahead and mix everything together until everything is smooth. Then I already combined in a separate bowl almond flour, coconut flour, and my sweetener. You need 2 cups of almond flour, and I highly recommend to find like the super fine almond flour. You can buy that at your local grocery store. And then you need 1/2 cup of coconut flour and 1/2 cup of sweetener. The sweetener I use is called Swerve, and I will link down below. You can order that off of Amazon. My local grocery store sells it, so I just buy it from there, but before they started carrying it, I just purchased it off of Amazon. And it's a natural sweetener that you can use in we use it in tons of baking recipes. So I'm going to go ahead and add these to my wet ingredients, and I just add it little by little. I would also like to mention that the sweetener that I use, they sell it in the granulated form and the powdered form. For this specific recipe, I like using the powdered form just because it is really fine and it just mixes in better with the batter, so I use powdered Swerve. But you can use the granulated if you can't find the powdered. I also I forgot to mix with my wet ingredients, so I'm just going to add it now, but I do recommend adding it with your wet ingredients. It's not that big of a deal, but I am going to add the pumpkin puree. Now, this is not like the pumpkin pie filling, it's the actual pumpkin puree, and the original recipe calls for 1 cup. I put about 1 1/4 to 1 1/2, depending on our mood. We like the pumpkin flavor, and to me, I wanted just a little bit more pumpkin flavor, so I do add about, like I said, a cup and a quarter to a cup and a half, give or take. And you're just going to add that into, like I said, originally you have to add it in with your wet ingredients, but I forgot to. So I'm just going to add it now, and hopefully it'll mix together okay. So we're going to add that to our mix. And then the last thing you're going to add to your batter is some baking powder, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Now we add a little bit more cinnamon because I like that cinnamon flavor. And then also it calls for, the original recipe calls for several different like allspice, cloves, and all of those, but I wanted to add a little bit more of the pumpkin flavor, so I use instead the pumpkin pie spice, and I add a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice instead of all the other things that it calls for in the original recipe. Which any changes that I make to the recipe, I'll make sure to add to the description box. That way you can refer back to it later. But instead of the allspice and cloves, I add pumpkin pie spice and a teaspoon of it. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to our mixture. And then the last thing I want to mention is you need a loaf pan. I don't remember the exact measurements. It is actually the 30 by 7, 30 and a half by 11 by 7 loaf pan. So it's longer than your average loaf pan. You can order this off of Amazon, and I will link this down below as well. But it does call for a longer loaf pan for this recipe, but it's great because it makes a lot, and you can slice it up and freeze it, and it freezes really well. So I did want to mention that it is a longer loaf pan, and then what I like to do is I add butter, and then I add parchment paper and a little bit more butter, just to line it, because since it is such a dense and heavy loaf, it is really difficult to take out of the pan. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this into the pan. Okay, so I have put my batter into my loaf pan, and my oven is preheated to 350 degrees. And the original recipe calls for you to bake it for 60 minutes and then leave it sitting in your oven for 15 minutes. With my oven, I have found I bake it for 15 minutes and then leave it, turn off the oven and leave it sitting for 15 minutes. So I bake it for 10 minutes less, but that's just my oven. Baking times vary depending on your oven, but I did have to bake mine 10 minutes less. I like it on the moist side, not too dry. And then what we like to do is slice it up, and then when we just keep it in the fridge, and then we stick it in the toaster oven, or you can microwave it or whatever, just to kind of have it warm. But I did want to mention that we cook it for about 10 minutes less than the original recipe. So this is how the pumpkin bread turned out. It's really yummy and really filling. My daughter loves it. My husband loves it. And my son, he is turning 1, so we've only given him a tiny bit, but he really enjoys it too, and it's super filling. And I especially love making it for fall because I make it for the kids also. I don't put like any add-ins, but you can add like walnuts or pecans, or even like some dark chocolate chips would make it really good too. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below and let me know what are some of your favorite pumpkin recipes. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!